Chapter 128. When Wen realized what he had just said, his little face instantly turned as red as a monkey's butt. His little eyes wandered for a long time, then he said righteously, "Yes, it's my father." "So what?" Although Wen was also very surprised that he had blurted it out, since he had already said it once, it was natural for him to say it a second or third time. Wen shouted crisply, "Daddy." Siyu smiled and touched Wen's face. "Good boy," Siyu finally heard Wen call him daddy. It was really not easy. At this moment, he felt that the burden on his shoulders had become much heavier, and he felt the weight of responsibility. Si Tang looked at Wen and then at Siyu. His expression of envy was overflowing. Would fifth uncle still adopt him when he had a biological son? Siyu touched Wen's soft hair and only retracted his hand before he was about to explode. His gaze turned to the other two children. However, he did not say anything in front of the children. He asked someone to send the two children to their elders. Then, he explained to Fu Yun and Wen that he had no intention of adopting other children. As for why such a rumor had spread, perhaps it was because his mother had jokingly mentioned it before, and it had been remembered by people with ulterior motives. Siyu told them about Si Tang's background and directly said that everything for the child was paid for by the family. He did not have to worry about food or clothing, and he also had a biological uncle who treated him well and was his guardian. This child did not affect the interests of his uncle's small family. Instead, they had to treat him better in order to gain more benefits. Thus, he lived very well at home. Siyu also had children of his own, so naturally, he would not adopt them. Even if he did not, he would consider it 10 years later. He did not feel that he had extra love to share with other children. Just Wen alone was enough to give him a headache. If there was another one, he would have to forgive him. When Wen heard about Si Tang's background, he understood him very well. After all, he was also an orphan in his previous life. However, understanding was one thing. He wasn't so generous as to share his parents with him. He only wanted to treat him better in the future. Fu Yunruo also felt that it was quite pitiful for this child to have no parents at such a young age. However, he had his family to support him and his biological uncle was around. It was not Siyu's turn to take care of him. Therefore, she did not overstep her boundaries and express her opinion. After clearing up the misunderstanding and smoothing out Wen's feathers, Siyu went to deal with the rumor. He was not going to argue with the child, but the elders still had to give him a warning. At the very least, such rumors could not continue, and they could not speak without thinking in front of the child and instill some unrealistic ideas. The next day, Si Tang and Si Zhongxing behaved like children who had done something wrong. They became much more reserved in front of Wen. After being admonished by their parents, they were no longer as lively. It was Wen who took the initiative to play with her two brothers. After all, they were all children. After a short while, they were playing together happily. Si Tang already knew that what his aunt had said in the past was wrong. She even apologized to him solemnly. Si Tang was very disappointed, but he still forgave his aunt. As for Wen, he could not bring himself to hate her. This younger brother was too good and too cute. It made him subconsciously want to dote on him. Now that he had such a fair, chubby, and soft younger brother, Si Tang felt that it was fine if he was not adopted. It was fine if he could stay by his younger brother's side. Fu Yunruo and the other two stayed on the island for a month. In the end, Si Zheng and Xie Zhiyun were reluctant to part with them, so they embarked on their journey back to China. After returning to China, Fu Yunruo became even busier. She was busy distributing gifts and local specialties to her friends and relatives. At the same time, she also had to pick up her almost stagnant career. She posted some photos of the scenery on the forum and shared her schedule with her fans for nearly a month. Then, she set a time to do a live broadcast. Fu Yunruo browsed the news on the internet. The popularity of the three of them had already died down. New entertainment news. Fu Yunruo started her live broadcast again after more than a month. Her popularity did not decrease at all. Instead, it became even more lively. Many of them were fans who had snuck in because of Wen and Siyu. Fu Yunruo picked a few questions and explained that she had disappeared for so long to bring Wen out to relax. She did not answer too many questions. She pretended not to see some of the questions that involved personal matters. Then, she officially started her live broadcast. Fu Yunruo quickly found the feeling of doing a live broadcast. Gradually, the audience stopped asking her about things other than the content of her live broadcast. There were fewer comments on the bullet screen. At this moment, most of the people who were talking were her fans of many years. She extended the duration of her live broadcast and only ended it after 3 hours. Siyu immediately went forward to pass her a glass of water. "Thank you for your hard work." "Thank you." After returning, Fu Yunruo also personally told the people close to her that she was dating Siyu. Siyu openly appeared by Fu Yunruo's side as Fu Yunruo's boyfriend. Fu Yunruo asked curiously, "Don't you have to work?" She already knew his identity. She also knew that he would occasionally disappear. When he was not filming, he would spend most of his time dealing with work. She felt that as the tyrant of tyrants, managing such a big business, it was right for him to be so busy all day. How could he have so much time to date? However, on second thought, this world was not scientific in the first place. She could not look at it with the eyes of ordinary people. Work is important, but my wife is more important. Siyu raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Why? You don't believe that your boyfriend can balance it out?" Fu Yunruo rolled her eyes. She had worried about him for nothing. He was always by her side. Even if he did not get tired of it, she would get tired of him sooner or later. Fu Yunruo did not accompany him all the time. She had too many things to do. However, when she looked up occasionally, she would see Siyu by her side. This feeling was very beautiful and very happy. However, there was still something troubling. The moment Fu Yunruo returned, she found out about something that was not good for her. Feng Shui Ruo had already been released. She had been changed to an execution outside the prison because she was pregnant. Counting the days, the female lead of the second novel should be arriving around this time. She could only sigh at the female lead's strength. Even so, the butterfly could not change her birth. Fu Yunruo thought about it. It should be the night of the charity gala. She also had a thought in her heart. She knew that the female lead of the original novel would not go offline so easily. However, Fu Yunruo was fearless now. Feng Shui Ruo was the mother and daughter's biggest backer. The Fu family was not controlled by them and changed to the surname Feng. Fu Zonghong was still alive and well. Furthermore, he and Feng wanting to divorce. The Fu family had nothing to do with them. As for the Chang family, Wen was not an ant that could be easily crushed now. He had a backer. The Chang family could not touch him. Fu Yunruo lamented that the male lead, Chang Zhuyu, was deeply in love with Feng Shui Ruo. He ignored his family's objections and insisted on being responsible for Feng Shui Ruo. He wanted to marry Feng Shui Ruo. If there was anyone in this world who still treated Feng Shui Ruo the same way as before, it was probably Chang Zhuyu. Furthermore, she was pregnant with his child now. However, because of the Chang family's firm opposition, Chang Zhuyu finally moved out with Feng Shui Ruo. For some reason, they actually moved to Fu Yunruo's neighborhood. When Fu Yunruo heard this news, she felt as if a fishbone was stuck in her throat. The only consolation was that their villas were located in the north and south respectively. They were quite far apart from each other, so they wouldn't run into each other often. Siyu already knew about this, but he did not do anything and did not tell Fu Yunruo. He did not want to affect her mood. It was rare for her to be so happy. Why would he want to ruin it? After returning, Fu Yunruo and Wen Ruo moved back to their own homes and did not stay in Siyu's house anymore. Even if she was told about this, it did not change her mind. Siyu had no choice but to move in with them and live in the villa next door. The adults did not tell Wen about these troublesome matters. Since they lived in the same neighborhood, there would be a day when they would bump into each other. When Wen saw Feng Shui Ruo appear in his line of sight, he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Wasn't this woman in jail? Why was she here? Feng Shui Ruo was wearing a loose white dress. When she saw Fu Yunruo and Wen, she subconsciously touched her belly. She was already 4 months pregnant. When she put her hand on her belly, one could see the curve of her belly. Feng Shui Ruo supported herself with one hand and touched her belly with the other. She walked towards Fu Yunruo and Feng Shui Ruo. Chang Zhuyu, who was at the side, supported Feng Shui Ruo nervously and asked her to slow down. Fu Yunruo held Wen's hand and took 2 steps back. Stop. Fu Yunruo told her not to get so close to her and to pay attention to the distance. People sympathized with the weak. If she used the child in her belly as an excuse, she would not be able to explain herself. When the time came, people would forget what she had done and accuse her of being unforgiving. She did not even let the child off. She said bluntly, "Please stay away from us." Feng Shui Ruo saw that she could not get close to them and could only stop. Brother Chang saw that I was feeling unwell and brought me out to relax. I didn't expect to see you. After being imprisoned for a period of time, her face was much paler and thinner than before. Of course, it could also be because of her pregnancy. Feng Shui Ruo lowered her eyes and said in a low voice, "What happened in the past? I was wrong. I let you down. So I'll accept whatever you want to do to me. But I beg you, can you let my mother off?" Fu Yunruo frowned. Her face was full of displeasure. It was really strange. She did not know what she was talking about. She did not do anything to them. Was she thinking too much? Chang Zhuyu could not stand Fu Yunruo's petty and unforgiving manner at all. He frowned and said, "Shui has already apologized to you. Can't you forgive her?" Fu Yunruo did not even have the desire to speak. Siyu said, "Look for me if you are unhappy. My Ruo does not want to see you." Chang Zhuyu looked at Siyu coldly. However, before he could say anything, the community's security guards noticed the commotion. The first thing they did when they walked over was to ask Fu Yunruo and her family out of concern. "Miss Fu, did they make things difficult for you?" The Chang family was a prominent family in the capital. If they wanted to live in this community, they naturally had their ways. Although the security guards had opinions, they did not have the right to speak. The security guards liked Fu Yunruo's family very much. Naturally, they would side with them. Therefore, they privately emphasized that they had to keep an eye on Feng Shui Ruo and pay attention to her movements. Feng Shui Ruo's expression did not change. She had experienced the fickleness of human nature during this period of time. She could accept this cold treatment silently. On the other hand, Chang Zhuyu's heart ached when he saw Feng Shui Ruo swallow her anger. He hated himself for being powerless. He could not even protect his own woman. Fu Yunruo thanked the security guards for their concern and expressed that she was fine. Only then did they leave. However, they still patrolled the area. If anything happened, they could come over immediately. Wen did not expect that woman to come. He stared straight at Feng Shuiruo's stomach. As long as he thought about the fact that the unborn child in her stomach was that disgusting woman, he could not control the malice in his heart. If she had a miscarriage, Feng Shuiruo felt a sense of malice. She instinctively looked over and met a pair of black eyes. Her heart stopped and she instinctively clutched her stomach. Siyu also saw Wen's expression. His eyes darkened. Then, as if nothing had happened, he held Fu Yunruo and Wen's hands. Let's go back. Chapter 129. Fu Yun could not help but complain, these people are really too much. Even the sun doesn't have as much presence as them. Siyu said, don't worry, they won't be free for long. Why are they still coming to this neighborhood? Are the other residents willing? Fu Yun found it strange. After all, the people who lived here were all famous people. Why would they be willing to let Feng Shui live here? The Chang family still has some influence in the capital. Fu Yun knew in her heart, but she still felt very unhappy. These people were really like cockroaches that could not be killed. They were too disgusting. However, Fu Yun did not want to move in order to avoid them. After all, she liked this place very much and was used to it. Even if she moved away, she might not be able to find a suitable place. Fu Yun complained to Siyu, but she quickly threw it to the back of her mind. She lowered her head and noticed Wen's unusual silence. She asked, Wen. What's wrong? Are you scared? Wen looked up and gave Fu Yun a cute smile. No. Fu Yun felt that it was a little strange. She was about to ask, but her attention was quickly diverted by something else. There was a person standing at the door. When he saw them walking back, he walked towards them. Fu Yun recognized that this was her fan, Lin Ji, who lived in the same neighborhood. Lin Ji saw Fu Yun and Wen and finally smiled. Long time no see. Ever since Wen was injured and hospitalized, Fu Yun had not returned to this neighborhood. Those who could visit her were all very close to her. Lin Ji had also applied to visit her previously, but he was rejected at that time, so he had been waiting for Fu Yun and the rest to come back. Long time no see. Fu Yun did not know that Lin Ji had gone to the hospital to visit her but was rejected. She was also quite happy to see Lin Ji. They just exchanged a few pleasantries and asked about each other's recent situation. They did not have much to talk about, so they just stood there and chatted awkwardly. Siyu reached out to hold her hand. Lin Ji noticed it immediately. You guys. Fu Yunruo lowered her head and looked at the hand that she was holding. Then, she said generously, we are together. Siyu's lips curled up in delight. Oh. Well, it's pretty good. Congratulations. Lin Ji was stunned for a moment. Then, he concealed his disappointment and sincerely congratulated her. Thank you. Don't tell anyone about this for the time being. Fu Yunruo exhorted. She didn't want to be on the hot search list again after finally coming down. Lin Ji nodded and promised that he wouldn't tell anyone. After that, Lin Ji took his leave. Fu Yun and the others returned to the house. When Fu Yun saw that Siyu was still holding her hand, she said, all right, he's gone. Can you let go of me now? Siyu said calmly, it's right and proper for me to hold my girlfriend's hand. Fu Yunruo glanced at him. Forget it. Don't think that I don't know what he's thinking. Isn't she just a normal friend? Even if he likes her, it's just a fan's love for their idol. Is there a need to be jealous? Wen rolled her eyes and gloated. Mom has so many fans. They all want to be my stepfather. You can only dream about it, Siyu said confidently. Even in terms of fans, no one could compare to him. He was Ruo's #1 fan. His username was also at the top of the donation list. Siyu looked at Fu Yunruo and decided to hide his identity well. He couldn't let her know about this account. Siyu saw that Fu Yunruo wasn't in a good mood because of the incident with Feng Shuiruo, so he suggested, "Do you want to stay at the flower garden for a few days?" Uncle Gua preferred to stay at the flower garden. On the day that they came back, Fu Yunruo stayed at the flower garden for a night and went back to the flower garden. Fu Yunruo didn't spend much time with Uncle Gua recently, so she felt bad. She also knew that Uncle Gua must miss Wenwen a lot, so she nodded and said, "That's good too." It was just that there were many people coming and going at the flower garden. Whether it was Wenwen or herself, their popularity was much higher than before. According to Sister Wang and the others, there were fans checking in at the flower garden almost every day. There were also reporters waiting for them. If they were discovered, it would be troublesome. Siyu said that he would take care of everything. Fu Yunruo trusted Siyu very much, so she nodded. The three of them didn't delay. They quickly packed their luggage and went to the flower garden. After the expansion of the flower garden, there were more places to stay. There was a room specially reserved for them. When Uncle Gua saw that Fu Yunruo and the others were going to stay here, he said that they were troublesome, but he was actually quite happy in his heart. His entire aura softened, and he even indulged Wenwen to run around him. Fu Yunruo was also happy when she saw how happy the grandfather and grandson pair were. However, when she thought about how Wenwen didn't go to school at the age where she should have gone to school, she felt that it wasn't too good. Is it really okay if Wenwen doesn't go to kindergarten? Siyu said, "Our family has specialized kindergartens and primary schools. If you don't mind, you can let Wenwen study there and make friends normally." Other than the Si family, the rest of the people in their school were the children of family friends like the Meng family. Ordinary people couldn't enter. Friendship during childhood was the purest and most precious. The Si family already had enough. They only needed to develop step by step, so they paid more attention to family harmony. The elders were all concerned about the closeness of the next generation, so they basically grew up together. Of course, there might be small groups, but there was no deep hatred between the children. If they were taught well, it would also promote healthy competition. After all, schools were the least likely place to fight and scheme. There were countless pairs of eyes watching the development of the next generation. Fu Yunruo asked carefully and hesitated when she heard that the school was in his hometown. Then, wouldn't she have to be separated from Wenwen? She wouldn't have to go to his hometown, right? Siyu didn't force Fu Yunruo to make a decision immediately. He quickly changed the topic. "I will be busy with work for a period of time starting tomorrow." Fu Yunruo heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly nodded. "Go ahead." It was better to go to work. If he accompanied her all day and didn't do anything, she was going to suspect that he was going to go bankrupt. "Don't worry, I can take good care of myself." "Yes, you have to take good care of yourself too." Siyu nodded with a smile. His gaze turned to Wenwen, who was squatting at the side and playing with a small shovel. "How many days should I take care of Wenwen?" Fu Yunruo and Wenwen raised their heads and looked over at the same time. "Children can play anywhere. It's tiring for you to take care of them all day. Why don't I take care of them for a few days? You can also gather with your friends." Siyu was very considerate. Even a mother needed private space. No matter how cute the children were, they would feel tired if they spent all their time with the children. Wenwen was very curious about how Siyu worked. He raised his small shovel and said loudly, "I want to go. Won't I disturb you?" Fu Yunruo hesitated. Siyu said with certainty, "No." Thus, Wenwen carried her small school bag as she wished and followed Siyu to work. There were many businesses under the C family's name in the capital. Even outsiders didn't know about them. Siyu brought Wen to an office building with more than 100 floors in the center of the capital. This office building belonged to the C family. There were different companies on each floor. Many of them seemed unrelated, but they were actually one of the C family's businesses. Siyu had an exclusive office on one floor. Usually, he would come here to work when necessary. However, most of the time, he would hold remote meetings at home. Siyu asked someone to move a chair to the side for Wen to sit. Then, he asked someone to report on official business. He had a special group of secretaries who could help him handle some of the less important work, except for those that required his personal approval. Wen listened to the reports of the elite men and women taking turns. He listened attentively. Wen used to run a company himself, so he knew a little about these reports. If there was a difference, the biggest one was probably the numbers. He used tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of units, while the others used hundreds of millions. However, the money wasn't in front of him. It was just a number, so Wen didn't feel much. However, when he heard the next report, he instantly pricked up his ears. Ever since the Chang family's investment failed some time ago, they have become more cautious. Chapter 130. Wen listened carefully to their conversation. Only then did he realize that Siyu had been dealing with the Chang family for a long time. However, their methods were gradual and they were slowly weakening the Chang family's power. After all, the Chang family was considered a powerful family in the country. If they were suddenly bankrupted, it would cause economic turmoil and attract the attention of the country. Wen finally understood the benefits of having a powerful backer. He was already thinking about how to destroy the Chang family. However, because he couldn't form a three-headed body and was under the watchful eyes of the adults, he couldn't do anything. Just as he was feeling depressed, Siyu gave him a huge surprise. Wen's eyes sparkled as he looked at Siyu. Suddenly, he felt very at ease. He and his mother were protected by someone, so they wouldn't be bullied easily. After the secretaries finished their report, only Siyu and Wen were left in the office. Siyu looked at Wen, patted his head, and asked, "How much did you hear?" If he answered that he had heard it clearly, it wouldn't be logical. After all, he was still a baby. Thus, he shook his head and said innocently, "I'm not sure." Siyu chuckled and didn't harp on the question. Instead, he pinched Wen's soft cheeks. He didn't care if Wen understood or not and said, "The Chang family's power is deeply rooted. Previously, they were lucky and couldn't be touched. Instead, they were attacked. However, I've tested them a few months ago. Their luck is about to run out." In the past, Siyu instinctively avoided their sharp edges. His intuition told him that going against them wouldn't end well. Thus, even though he didn't like them at first, he avoided them as much as he could. Later, he met Ruoruo and found out about Wen's background. Thus, he investigated thoroughly. He discovered that the Chang family's luck was so good that it was strange. Furthermore, he found out that anyone who went against the Chang family and Feng Shui didn't have a good ending. Even if they invested in projects that Siyu thought were full of loopholes and would do more harm than good, they would still make a lot of money. After that, Siyu saw them provoking Ruoruo again and again. She was still angry. How could she let her child's mother be bullied? Thus, he gave the Chang family some trouble. Siyu didn't expect them to step into the trap so easily and even succeed in trapping them. Siyu was surprised that he did not suffer any backlash. Siyu realized that their luck might have run out, so he took advantage of the situation and played a few more games. However, they still had a foundation. If it were an ordinary family, they would have long been bankrupted. His methods only caused great damage to the Chang family. After recuperating for a period of time, they would slowly recover. I'm not a good person, and I don't expect you to be a pure good person. After all, Wen would be in his position in the future. If he was too weak and kind, it would not be a good thing. Wen looked at Siyu. Her big round eyes seemed to be shocked as they widened even more. Was it okay to teach the child like this? Which parent would want their child to become a bad person? Although Wen was not a good person and had done bad things before, his mother wanted him to be a good child. He had always tried his best to be a good child. However, Siyu did not expect him to be a good person. However, even if we are to be bad, we have to be honest. Siyu was addicted to pinching Wen's face. He hadn't pinched her little face in a long time. He really missed it. Wen finally reacted and hurriedly covered her face. Her face was red from the pinching. However, how were they going to be honest? Wen's heart was full of doubts. However, Siyu did not answer him. Instead, he brought him along and let him see how he dealt with the Chang family. If Fu Yun did not know what the father and son were doing, she would have thought that Wen would stay with Siyu for at most 2 days before returning. However, day after day passed. Wen left punctually with Siyu every day and returned at night. Fu Yun was speechless. She suddenly felt a little jealous. Wen only clung to his father and not her now that he had a father. After autumn, winter came quickly. In the blink of an eye, they changed into thick winter clothes. Not long after, the first snow fell in the capital. After that, it snowed a few times and the ground was covered with a thick layer of snow. When Wen saw the white snow fluttering in the air, he could not help but feel nostalgic. Then, he excitedly wanted to go out and play in the snow. Fu Yun wrapped Wen into a ball before letting him out to play in the courtyard. However, he could only play for 20 minutes. Fu Yun sighed. Unknowingly, they had been in the capital for almost a year. Time had passed so quickly. However, in retrospect, many things had happened in the past year. They had gained a foothold in the capital. Wen had become a well-known celebrity and had also acknowledged her biological father. She also had a boyfriend. Yuan Axian ran over in the heavy snow. He complained to Fu Yun that Wen was so popular during the summer holidays. He should have taken on some advertisement endorsements and participated in some activities. In the end, he walked the path of his old father. Other than filming, he basically did not participate in any other activities. Both the adult and the child were so willful. If they had done their business properly, they would have been well-known international superstars all over the world. This year, they were invited to participate in the Spring Festival Gala. He tried his best to persuade them but could not get them to agree. Yuan Axian grumbled about this for a long time. This time, he came over because Wen's Xianxia movie was about to be screened. Although he was only a small supporting role and played the role of the male lead when he was young, because of his popularity, the director specially increased the duration of the movie. During the publicity, he also brought his popularity into the movie. The Xianxia movie would be released during the new year. The director wanted Wen to participate in the publicity in the capital. However, Fu Yun and Siyu rejected him. It was one thing for children to like acting. He only needed to act in the movie. There was no need for him to participate in other messy things. Yuan Axian did not insist. He changed the topic and asked if they wanted to film a public service announcement. Public service announcements were different from others. They were official in nature. Although they would not be paid, it was good for their reputation. After Fu Yun understood, she did not have any objections. Yuan Axian was inclined to let Wen participate. Seeing that Fu Yun did not object to this and that Wen and Siyu had agreed, he happily went to make the arrangements. However, he did not leave immediately. Instead, he stayed at the Fu family home and watched them live a leisurely and peaceful life. His slightly impetuous heart also calmed down. Then, he smiled and built a snowman with Wen. Seeing that it was about time, Fu Yun called Wen into the house. Wen ran into the house with a red face. Fu Yun gave him a cup of hot water and touched his face and hands to make sure that he was not cold. Siyu was also staying at the Fu family home. Besides going to the villa next door to sleep at night, he spent most of his time at the Fu family home. Yuan Axian followed him into the house and started talking to Siyu. They talked about retiring from the industry. This was Siyu's plan a long time ago. He was supposed to retire from the industry last year, but because of Wen, he delayed it. But now, it was time to retire from the industry. Acting was Siyu's hobby. For this hobby, he had been in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years. However, this was also because it did not hinder him from inheriting the family business. Otherwise, his family would not be so carefree. In the past, it could be said that he used all his free time outside of work to act. In the future, his focus would be on his family and business, and he would not be able to care about the entertainment industry. In the future, Yuan Axian would not take on any work for Siyu. Yuan Axian was old, and besides taking care of Wen, he would not take on any newcomers. The rest of his energy would be spent on managing the company's brokerage department. Fu Yun confirmed with Siyu, "Are you really going to retire from the entertainment industry?" In the past, when she saw that he did not do anything, she thought that Siyu was going to give up on this idea. "Yes, I did not intend to stay in the industry for the rest of my life." Fu Yun nodded and respected his decision. Wen saw that they had already planned for next year and felt regretful. He wanted to work with Daddy. They had only worked together once, and he wanted to do it many times. Wen could not help but feel a little disappointed. Fu Yun saw that Wen was unhappy, so she changed the topic. "It's almost the new year. How do we plan to celebrate the new year?" This year was the first new year they had spent in the village. Fu Yun had originally planned to bring Wen back to the village to celebrate the new year. However, the village was busy now. As there were big investors investing in projects there, and with the support of the government, it was very efficient. Now, the village was replanning and building villas. In the village, there would be major projects and renovations in the next few years. There were construction sites everywhere, and it was not convenient to go back for the new year. Hence, Uncle May and Auntie May did not want them to come back until the village was built. Uncle Guo was not prepared to go back, so they decided to spend the new year in the capital. When Wen heard that it was the new year, he liked it the most. In the past, he had followed the older children in the village to visit every family for New Year's greetings and to ask for red packets and snacks. If he did not return to the village this year, there would not be such fun. Thinking of this, Wen felt a little melancholic. He felt that his younger brothers had almost forgotten about him. After all, they were all children. Who could remember their childhood friends so clearly? They were playful and forgetful, unlike him, sigh. However, with Mommy, it did not matter where they went. Moreover, there were new family members this year. Wen glanced at Siyu. Siyu said, "Let's celebrate the new year at home." His hometown still had the custom of celebrating the new year. His parents asked Siyu in private, hoping that Fu Yun and Wen would go back for the new year so that they could officially introduce their identities. However, Siyu rejected them. He had already figured out Fu Yun's character. No matter what, he could not be too impatient. He had to do it step by step. Otherwise, it would cause her to dislike him. He had just let her meet his parents and accept them this year. This progress was just right. If he let her go home with him, it would not be good. In the future, if Fu Yun agreed to marry him, she would be the rightful mistress. At that time, it would be most appropriate for her to meet the rest of the family. When Fu Yun heard that Siyu was so considerate, she felt embarrassed. However, she could not ask him to bring Wenwen back to celebrate the new year with her grandparents. She only said, "If Uncle and Auntie Yun are free, you can come over to celebrate the new year with us." Siyu smiled and nodded. They will be very happy. Although they had discussed it, New Year's Day had just passed and there was still some time before the official New Year. Fu Yun was also a little busy. Although her career was not as good as Siyu's and could not even compare to Wenwen's, it had been steadily rising. She had also made a lot of money this year. Not long ago, she had just paid off her loan. Now, Tian was planning every day how to expand her studio. Chapter 131. Everything was developing for the better. Fu Yun thought that since it was her first year in the capital, she had to make it lively. She even asked Wenwen to plan how to spend the new year this year. Wenwen was very interested in this. She wrote down her plans excitedly every day. When she suddenly remembered one day, she added to her notebook and made sure to do everything she could think of. Fu Yun was busy for a period of time. Suddenly, she realized that Feng Shui and Chang Zhuyu, who lived here, only appeared once. After that, they did not appear in front of Fu Yun again. She felt that it was strange. This was not their style. Fu Yun was already prepared for them to appear in front of her from time to time. However, it was a good thing that they did not appear. It was not that Feng Shui did not want to look for Fu Yun and the others. It was that she could not even protect herself. The Chang family's company had been besieged recently. Whenever there was a problem with the company, it would be exposed. Usually, companies would have these problems. If they were not targeted or not exposed, as long as they did not go overboard, the higher-ups would turn a blind eye. However, the higher-ups suddenly started a strict investigation. With so many subsidiaries and holding companies in trouble, if they still did not know that they were being targeted, then they were really stupid. When it rains, it pours. Just as they were busy dealing with it, many projects were snatched away. It was not exactly snatched. It was just that they had prepared for a long time and were confident that they would win the projects. However, in the end, they missed the opportunity. There were also many big customers and suppliers who terminated their contracts. The huge Chang family was in a huge crisis. Chang Zhuyu left early and returned late every day. He looked tired and had dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that he had not rested well for a long time. In the beginning, he could still insist on coming back every day to see Feng Shui and talk to her. Later on, he came back every 2 to 3 days. Later on, he just stayed in the office. At first, Feng Shui did not take the Chang family's small problems to heart. She thought that it would be solved just like last time. In Feng Shui's heart, the Chang clan was an unshakable giant. They were even more powerful than the Fu clan. She only had Chang Zhuyu left. She had to have him under her control. However, he did not expect that the situation this time was more serious than before. It was so serious that he could go bankrupt at any time. Feng Shui turned off the TV with an ugly expression. She touched her bulging belly. She was already more than 7 months pregnant. She wanted to be the mistress of the Chang family. She couldn't let herself give birth to another daughter without knowing the truth. However, if the Chang family were to go bankrupt, then all of her plans would be for naught. It couldn't be. How could an aristocratic family like the Chang family fall just like that? Feng Shui thought a lot of things at that moment. She even thought that the Chang family was setting up a trap to create an atmosphere of imminent bankruptcy so that she would want to retreat and abandon Chang Zhuyu. Because of this, Chang Zhuyu saw clearly that she despised the poor and loved the rich, and did not love him at all. This made him completely disappointed in her. If Feng Shui thought to herself, she would never be fooled. She would never give up the identity of Madame Chang that was already in her hands. The door opened with a click. Chang Zhuyu walked in with a tired face. He must have not rested well for a few days. The suit he was wearing was wrinkled. Feng Shui walked over with one hand on her waist and the other hand on her belly. She looked worried when she saw Chang Zhuyu. Brother Chang. When Chang Zhuyu saw Feng Shui, he hurried over to support her. Why did you come out? Brother Chang, I was worried about you. Feng Shui followed Chang Zhuyu and walked back slowly. She frowned and said, You haven't been home for a long time. I couldn't sleep well at night. I dreamed that something happened to you. Chang Zhuyu hurriedly said gently, I'm fine. I'm just a little busy with the company. Feng Shui sat down on the sofa with his help. You have to take good care of yourself. The child and I are very worried about you. Chang Zhuyu rubbed Feng Shui's belly and agreed. Feng Shui held Chang Zhuyu's hand and asked with concern, Brother Chang, tell me honestly. Is the company in a bad situation? I saw on the news that, don't worry. This is only temporary. I won't let you and your daughter suffer, I still have some savings. It may not be of much help, but it's still a small token of my appreciation. Chang Zhuyu's voice became even gentler. How can I take your money? Don't worry. It will be over soon. Feng Shui saw that he was determined not to take it. She frowned and said, If only I were a good match for you. Then I could help you. As Feng Shui spoke, tears welled up in her eyes. She bit her lip and said, Brother Chang, why don't you listen to Uncle and Auntie's arrangement and marry a lady of equal social status? I don't care, as long as you are fine. Before Feng Shui could finish her sentence, Chang Zhuyu hugged her with a heartbroken expression. Don't talk nonsense. I only want you. Those people are just adding insult to injury. When the Chang family recovers, none of them will be able to escape. Anger flashed in Chang Zhuyu's eyes. He had not been having a good time recently. He had been running around looking for partners for the company. Bad news about the company had spread and caused panic. The company's stock price had fallen continuously, and tens of billions of yuan had disappeared. Many people who had offended the Chang family and looked down on them had come to step on them. Chang Zhuyu had not thought much of it before. The business world was like a battlefield. They were not as powerful as the Chang family, so they could only accept it when the Chang family took the cake. He did not expect that those small companies who had once trembled in fear under the Chang family would dare to step on them. The ants that the Chang family had once looked down on had been twisted into a rope and bitten the Chang family until it hurt. There were also those who had jumped ship when the Chang family was in trouble. Chang Zhuyu made a mental note of them. When this crisis was over, he would deal with them one by one. They had probably forgotten the consequences of offending the Chang family. When this is over, we will hold a wedding of the century and let the whole world know that you are the woman that I, Chang Zhuyu, cherish. Feng Shui smiled through her tears. Of course I believe in you, Brother Chang. Suddenly, she seemed to have made up her mind. Brother Chang, let's get married. Chang Zhuyu was stunned. He stared blankly at Feng Shui. Feng Shui held his hand and looked at Chang Zhuyu with bright eyes. It's okay even if the Chang family can't get over this. I'm willing to suffer with you. I love you. Whether we are rich or poor, I want to be with you. This was the first time in many years that Chang Zhuyu had heard such a straightforward confession from Feng Shui. His breathing quickened. After a long while, he hugged Feng Shui excitedly. Did I hear wrongly? Shui, you have finally agreed to marry me. Chapter 132. I'm so happy. Shui, say that again. Can you say it again? Chang Zhuyu hugged Feng Shui and twirled her around excitedly. Feng Shui cried out in surprise and angrily punched him twice. She hugged him with both of her hands and refused to let go, looking completely dependent on him. Shui, can you say that again? Feng Shui's face turned red. She turned her head and said, forget it if you didn't hear it. I heard it. I can't forget it. Chang Zhuyu placed Feng Shui on the sofa and half-knelt in front of Feng Shui. Shui, you've finally agreed to marry me. I'm so happy. Ever since they got engaged, Chang Zhuyu had always wanted to get married as soon as possible. He had proposed several times but was rejected because Shui wanted to stand at the top of the entertainment industry before she agreed to marry him. Chang Zhuyu had tried his best to pave the way for Shui. Just as Shui was about to reach the top, her skyscraper collapsed in just a year. She went from being loved by everyone to being hated by everyone. He wanted to seek justice for Shui, but he couldn't even protect himself. Chang Zhuyu had always been a proud son of God. He had never suffered so much. In the past 2 years, everything went wrong for Chang Zhuyu. He couldn't even protect the woman he loved the most. Chang Zhuyu hated himself for being so helpless. He didn't have the face to propose to Shui. He couldn't help but wonder if Shui would dislike him if she saw him like this, but now, Shui actually agreed. Was he dreaming? Shui, you said you agreed to marry me, didn't you? Feng Shui couldn't help but laugh when she saw how eager he was. Yes, I agreed. Let's get married right away. Chang Zhuyu held Feng Shui's hand tightly. Feng Shui nodded. However, she suddenly thought of something and her smile gradually faded. Feng Shui hesitated and said, Uncle and Auntie. She bit her lip and said gloomily, the daughter-in-law they want is not me. My reputation is a stain, forget it. I can't be a burden to you. Feng Shui forced a smile. You deserve better. Shui, don't belittle yourself. In my heart, you're the best. Chang Zhuyu said affectionately. Don't worry. They're just temporarily confused. My parents have been good to you, haven't they? They'll get over it. I won't let you suffer. Chang Zhuyu stroked Feng Shui's belly. Moreover, you're carrying the Chang family's golden grandson. Shui, why don't you come home with me? My parents will definitely treat you very well for the sake of the child. Feng Shui wanted to use the child in her belly to make Chang Zhuyu and his parents accept her. Chang Zhuyu was the only son in the family. How could he not like children? Previously, she had thought wrongly and thought that she would definitely be wronged if she lived in the Chang family with her current identity. That was why she thought of a way to live alone. Now that she thought about it, if she was pregnant with the next generation of the Chang family and made her presence known in front of them, even if they had a grudge against her, for the sake of the child in her belly, they would not dare to go too far with her. Unfortunately, she had secretly checked at the hospital. It was a girl. It would be better if it was a boy. Feng Shui hesitated. But I'm not the rightful wife. Chang Zhuyu suddenly had an idea. Shui, let's get married first. Ha! After we get married, you'll be the rightful wife of the Chang family. Chang Zhuyu thought he had come up with a good idea, so he looked at Feng Shui expectantly. Is that okay? Yes. It'll be hard on you. Chang Zhuyu was full of guilt. I can't give you a grand wedding right away. Feng Shui covered his lips with her hand and shook her head gently. She smiled shyly but blissfully. I'm fine. Their eyes met, full of love. In the end, they secretly went to get married. Then, Chang Zhuyu brought Feng Shui back to the Chang family and announced that Feng Shui was his rightful wife. Chang Zhuyu's parents were furious. They had gone through so much trouble to find an only daughter who was not as rich as the Chang family. She had promised to help the Chang family through this difficult time after the marriage. But their son was a burden to them. The Chang family was in a mess. In the end, Feng Shui got her wish and moved into the Chang family. This family belonged to Chang Zhuyu in the future. And Feng Shui was the person he cherished the most, so the servants of the Chang family did not dare to treat Feng Shui coldly. Hence, Feng Shui's life was quite smooth. Fu Yun did not know about the Chang family's affairs. She had seen the Chang family on the news several times and even heard rumors that the Chang family was going bankrupt. At first, she did not dare to believe it. That was a domineering CEO with the male lead halo. How could he go bankrupt? But some of her friends had told her about this in private, and it was not groundless. She had heard that many aristocratic families were eyeing the Chang family covetously, trying to get a share of the profits. There were no eternal friends in aristocratic families, only eternal benefits. If there was anyone to blame, it was the Chang family's fault for being too domineering. They did not even realize that they had offended others. Now, there was a rich financial group that directly attacked the Chang family from all directions. The aristocratic families who were watching from the sidelines were shocked. They did not know when the Chang family had offended such a person. Hence, when the Chang family was in trouble, no aristocratic family was willing to take the risk to lend a helping hand. It could only be said that everyone kicks a man who is down. The Chang family's bankruptcy was within everyone's expectations, but it was beyond their expectations that they would be defeated so early. The Chang family's funds were cut off, they were unable to repay their huge debts, and there were a lot of lawsuits. When Father Chang heard the report, his vision turned black. He fell backward and fell into darkness amidst the screams of the people around him. The Chang family was finished. Before the new year, the Chang family could only declare bankruptcy. All the assets under their name were liquidated to repay their huge debts. When Chang Zhuyu saw that even the old house that his family had lived in for many years was being sealed and prepared for auction, he heard all sorts of sharp cries. His ears were ringing and his ears were ringing. Feng Shui had just gained a foothold in the Chang family when such an unforeseen event happened. She was completely stunned. How could this be? How could such a powerful aristocratic family like the Chang family fall? How was this possible? Mother Chang saw Feng Shui standing at the side in a daze in a white dress. Her eyes were filled with hatred. She pounced on Feng Shui, wanting to tear her apart. It's all your fault. You're a jinx. You've caused so much trouble for the Chang family. What sins have we committed all these years? Why do you have to harm us? It's all your fault. It's all your fault. Feng Shui instinctively covered her face when she saw the sharp nails coming at her. Are you satisfied now that you've caused so much trouble for the Chang family? Why don't you go and die, jinx? It's not me. It's not. Feng Shui wanted to avoid Mother Chang's attack, but she couldn't. Everyone else was in a state of panic. They stood at the side and watched coldly. Chang Zhuyu was the first to come back to his senses. He went forward to protect Feng Shui. He pushed Mother Chang away and roared, "Enough." The veins on his neck bulged. Mother Chang was stunned. She was stunned for a long time. Then, she fell to the ground and cried, "What sins have I committed?" Feng Shui leaned against Chang Zhuyu. Her thoughts were in a mess. She still felt that everything in front of her was unreal. The news that the Chang family was in a financial crisis was true. The Chang family owed a lot of debts. Even if they liquidated all the assets under their name, it wouldn't be enough to pay them back. She had jumped into the fire pit. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Feng Shui felt that her lower body was wet. She held her stomach and said, "It hurts." Chang Zhuyu hugged Feng Shui and asked anxiously, "Shui, what's wrong? Where does it hurt?" "My stomach." Feng Shui looked like she was in pain. Chang Zhuyu hurriedly carried Feng Shui and rushed out. "I'll take you to the hospital right now." Chapter 133. Perhaps it was because the Chang family had suffered losses in their investments this year. Although they had recovered for the time being, the Chang family could no longer bear the pressure of being besieged. Of course, the bigger reason was that the forces besieging the Chang family did not give them a chance to breathe. They were closely linked, and the Chang family could not even compromise. They could only brace themselves and face the battle, ultimately suffering a crushing defeat. This was a very beautiful business war. Everyone felt sorry for the Chang family's fall, but they were also shocked by the other party's power and vigilant. The upheaval caused by the change in the upper echelons did not affect the ordinary circle. Although the employees under the Chang family were very uneasy, they were not worried that they would lose their jobs after the new year. The Chang family had already been acquired. For the time being, the upper echelons would undergo a major change, but the employees at the bottom would not undergo any major changes. At most, they would be injected with new blood. When Fu Yun saw the news report on the Chang family, she was stunned. Not long ago, there were rumors that the Chang family was going bankrupt. Not long after, they had declared bankruptcy. Fu Yun saw the overwhelming news on the internet and television. It even made it to the top searches several times. Everyone felt sorry that such a large aristocratic family had fallen just like that. However, because of this, most people did not say anything unpleasant. At most, they sighed that the affairs of the world were impermanent. It was already pitiful enough for a proud son of heaven to fall into the dust. They should be more polite with their words. Siyu said to Fu Yun, "You don't have to worry about them bothering you in the future." "You did it." Fu Yun reacted and asked in surprise. Siyu said, "It's not just me. The Chang family has offended many people over the years. They could only blame the Chang family for being too merciless in the past. They frequently attacked Wang Pu of Tianliang and caused the destruction of many families. They were too overbearing and did not leave any leeway. Who knew how many people hated the Chang family? Otherwise, Siyu would not have been able to topple the Chang family so quickly. Those people had put in a lot of effort, and some wanted to take advantage of the situation. She had never asked Siyu about his work, so she did not know what he had been doing. She also did not know much about the business world. After all, she was not in this circle. After realizing Siyu's true power, Fu Yun felt that only Siyu had the power to bankrupt the Chang family. Fu Yun felt all kinds of emotions. When she was at the peak of her anger, she thought. However, she knew what she was capable of. Without the mind of a business genius, how could she shake up a behemoth by herself? That was why she told herself to forget the past of the original body, to not care about them, and to live a new future. Now that the Chang family had fallen, Feng Shuiruo and her mother had been pushed out of the circle. Living the life of an ordinary person was the biggest punishment for them. The grievances that the original body had suffered, they had returned it tenfold, 100-fold. Fu Yun's mood suddenly brightened. Everything was over. Siyu could not help but laugh when he saw that Fu Yun had only asked a simple question and did not intend to make a fuss about it. Okay, he had worried too much in the past. He knew it. With such an outstanding man like him, how could she be so blind as to fall for that guy from the Chang family? Siyu was in a good mood, so he told Fu Yun about the situation. The Fu family did not do anything this time. They did not participate. The Fu family did not do anything, whether it was to lend a helping hand or to add insult to injury. They just watched coldly from the sidelines. Fu Zonghong's health report was done at his private hospital, so Siyu naturally knew everything. With his current health condition, it was good enough that he could protect the Fu family. He did not have any extra energy to expand his territory. Siyu knew that Fu Yun had a grudge against the Fu family, so he did not say much. He only told her the situation objectively. Fu Yun's expression was indifferent. She did not have any other thoughts. There was nothing in the Fu family that made her reluctant to part with. He only heard about how the Chang family had been defeated. After satisfying his curiosity, he waved his hand nonchalantly. I don't know about these things. Do as you see fit. It's fine as long as you didn't lose out. When Siyu heard this, he smiled confidently and said, I will never lose out. Then Siyu told Fu Yun another piece of news. Fang Shui gave birth to a daughter. Both mother and daughter are safe. Fu Yun lamented that the female lead was lucky. There was a video on the internet. Fang Shui gave birth prematurely because she was beaten by her mother-in-law. In the end, she still gave birth. Fu Yun sighed for a while. Yes, we don't have to pay attention to them in the future. They are not from the same world. Even though she did not know if the plot of the second movie would return 20 years later, the plot had already collapsed. It would not return to its original state, right? If Fang Shui and the Chang family were tied together, their future would be uncertain. Forget it. She could not be bothered to think about it. Just as she had always said, each of them would live their own lives. Siyu and Wenwen also came to listen to the conversation between father and son behind Fu Yun's back. Siyu asked Wenwen, how is it? What are your thoughts? Wenwen was still immersed in the excitement that his father was not only good at acting, but also business. When he heard Siyu's question, he immediately straightened his back. He straightened his chubby little face and said seriously, if you're a man, you should compete face to face. Using some despicable means that can't be brought to the table will only lower your level. Siyu patted Wenwen's head as if he was a promising child. Siyu had attacked the Chang family from all sides. He had used an overt scheme to tell everyone that he was going to mess with them. Siyu did not expect the Chang family to be so weak. They knew that someone was targeting them, but they still jumped into the trap one by one. He really wondered how the Chang family had risen in the past. How could they support such a big family with such a low IQ? Wenwen could not help but say, you are so powerful. No matter how hard he tried in his previous life, the most he could do was create an economic crisis. He could not shake the Chang and Fang families at all. He did not expect Siyu to take down the Chang family in one move. Can I also become so powerful in the future? Of course. You are Siyu's son. Siyu patted Wenwen's head. Strike where it hurts. Once you make a move, you have to kill with one blow. You can't give the other party a chance to turn things around. Wenwen nodded. He thought to himself, why would I need to save up for revenge? I won without doing anything. Chapter 134. Wenwen had been taught by Siyu for 3 to 4 months before he finally understood what Siyu wanted to teach him. Siyu must have sensed that he wanted to do bad things, so he wanted to correct his character. Wen had no one to teach him before, so his character was formed by many years of experience. He had seen too much evil and knew that he was not a good person. After being reborn, he had grown up in a honeypot. His character had changed a lot, but he still had the imprint of his previous life. When he met the people from his previous life, he would occasionally have thoughts of doing evil things. When Siyu saw the other side of his character, Wen felt very uneasy. He was afraid that Siyu would be disappointed in him and think that he was not the good child that Siyu wanted, so Siyu would not love him anymore. However, Siyu spent more energy teaching him slowly. Wen always felt that Siyu liked him because he was his son and not because of him. However, he felt that Siyu's love for him was not inferior to his mother's. Wen could not help but think that this was what people often said about a father's love being as heavy as a mountain. He smiled blissfully. Fu Yun heard Wen's laughter and turned to look at him with a smile on his face. "What are you dreaming of? Why are you so happy?" At this moment, Wen was lying on Siyu's shoulder and sleeping soundly. No one knew what he was dreaming of, but his little mouth was wide open and he was smiling happily. It was rare that the weather was good, so they disguised themselves and brought the child out to play. It was very tiring for the child to play crazily. They had just finished dinner when it was past 7 in the evening and they were sleepy and drowsy. Siyu carried the child like an ordinary family of 3 and walked leisurely among the lively crowd. Fu Yun said, "Shall we go back?" They had run up and down with the child today, so they did not have time to rest. No matter how strong they were, they would be tired if they carried the child and walked. Furthermore, if Fu Yun still remembered, Siyu's hands would not be able to carry heavy objects for long periods of time no matter how well he recovered. Siyu met Fu Yun Ruo's concerned gaze and did not reject her good intentions. Fu Yun Ruo made a phone call and then walked to the side of the road. Soon, a car stopped in front of them. After placing Wen in the child's safety chair, Fu Yun was about to get into the car when Siyu grabbed her hand. Fu Yun turned around in confusion. Siyu smiled. "Get the chauffeur and the bodyguard to send the child back. We haven't spent time alone in a long time." Siyu sighed in her heart. This was the difference between having a child and not having one. Especially when the child was still young, it was rare for adults to spend time with each other. This little third wheel was too much of a presence. Fu Yun Ruo hesitated for a moment and then nodded. Although they seemed to be traveling as a family of 3, there were many bodyguards in the dark to prevent any unexpected situations. Fu Yun Ruo was not worried. Hence, after Siyu made the request, Fu Yun Ruo thought that they did not have much time alone. After all, he was her boyfriend and she had to coax him, so she quickly agreed. The two of them walked on the streets, and there was a lot of noise around them. It was full of fireworks. It was almost the end of the year, and the streets already had a festive atmosphere. There were window decorations on the windows of the shops, and festive flower pots were placed at the door. Siyu reached out and held Fu Yun Ruo's hand. Their fingers intertwined. Fu Yun Ruo looked up at Siyu. Her face was a little hot, but she still held his hand back. The places where their palms touched transmitted warmth to each other. It was as if the two of them were blending together and getting closer to each other. Fu Yun Ruo looked at the lively fireworks and smiled. "It's almost the new year. We should prepare for the new year." Siyu responded softly and couldn't help but smile. Preparing for the new year was a novel and exciting experience. The next day, Fu Yun Ruo and Siyu brought their children to buy New Year goods. Buying new clothes was an indispensable part of the New Year's new atmosphere. Siyu's clothes were all custom-made, but he preferred Fu Yun Ruo to personally choose clothes for him in the shop. It was a pity that they couldn't openly shop in the big shopping malls. That would easily expose themselves. They could only go to high-end shops that paid attention to the privacy of their customers. This was the trouble of being a celebrity. At this time, many companies had started to have their New Year's break. People who went up north had returned to their hometown to reunite with their families. Even their flower beds had started to close 3 days ago. However, the capital was still very lively. There were all kinds of New Year goods in the neighborhood, but they still went out to shop and experience the lively atmosphere. Although Fu Yunruo didn't have any relatives in the capital, she already knew many relatives and friends. There were a lot of New Year goods to prepare. Fu Yunruo had already bought a batch 2 days ago and sent them back to the village by express delivery. This time, the people she wanted to buy were her relatives and friends in the capital. Although they weren't blood-related relatives, she still wanted to visit Uncle Gua's students. There were also some friends who had helped her a lot. The family of 3 went out empty-handed every day and came back with big and small bags. The 3 of them were in high spirits every day, as if they didn't know fatigue. Fu Yunruo followed the customs in the village and bought couplets, snacks, and drinks for the guests. After that, they cleaned the house together. Although they could hire someone to clean the house, doing it themselves seemed to give them a greater sense of accomplishment. With the people closest to them by their side, they didn't feel tired as they chatted and laughed with each other. Fu Yunruo looked at Wen, who surrounded her and see you every day. Her face was red and her eyes were sparkling. He was even happier than last year. Of course, it could also be that he was a year older and more sensible, so he was more lively. It could also be that his parents were by his side. Amidst the busy preparations, they welcomed the new year. On New Year's Eve, Fu Yunruo followed the village's customs. After lunch, she took out the grapefruit leaves that she had found early in the fridge and put them in the water to boil bath water. According to the traditional customs, the grapefruit leaves could wash away the bad luck on people and bring good luck to the new year. Fu Yunruo felt that Wen and Siyu's injuries were too unlucky. It was a good time to wash them away and have good luck next year. In addition, they also started to prepare for the New Year's Eve dinner tonight, as well as putting up couplets and window flowers. As it was the new year, Qian Xingnan went home for the holidays. There were only 4 people at home. Wen had already changed into new clothes. She was wearing a bright red children's Tang-style costume, which made Wen's little face flush. She looked like a little fairy who had walked out of a New Year painting. Uncle Gua was also wearing a Tang-style costume, which made him look hale and hearty, as if he were 10 years younger. Uncle Gua had his hands behind his back as he instructed Siyu to put up the couplets. Wen stepped on a small stool and spread the stickers on the table. She pasted paste on one side, then picked it up with both hands, jumped off the small stool, and ran to the French windows. She slapped the stickers on the glass and smoothed them out with her chubby little hands. Wen took a few steps back and admired her masterpiece for a moment before nodding in satisfaction. It slanted. A little more to the right. Wen looked over and saw Grandpa Gua instructing his father to put up the couplets by the door. He ran over and said excitedly, "Let me help." Fu Yunruo was preparing the New Year's Eve dinner in the kitchen. She listened to the commotion outside, and the smile on her face never faded. God had given her this fortuitous encounter and did not treat her unfairly. Wen made her feel a sense of belonging to this world, and Siyu filled her with anticipation for the future. Recently, Fu Yunruo rarely thought about the other world. Her memories of the past 20 years seemed to be separated by fog and gauze, so hazy that she could no longer see clearly. Sometimes, she even felt that she was the real Fu Yunruo. The so-called transmigration, the so-called other world, was just a golden millet dream of hers. Whether it was the butterfly dream Zhuangzhou or the butterfly dream Zhuangzhou, Fu Yunruo had already accepted it calmly and hoped that everyone could live happily. Siyu and Wenwen were scourges. After they finished pasting the couplets, they went to the kitchen to help. However, Wenwen quickly shouted out of the kitchen and followed Uncle Gua to walk around outside. Siyu helped Fu Yunruo as they chatted. Although there were only 4 of them, the New Year's Eve dinner was very sumptuous. Chicken, duck, and fish were indispensable. Fu Yunruo made steamed dumplings with pork and cabbage stuffing, 4 happiness meatballs, and braised carp. Siyu looked at the delicious dishes Fu Yunruo made. The rich aroma filled the air, and he felt that he was full of appetite at this moment. Thus, he could not help but use his chopsticks to pick up a piece of meat. It smelled so good, so delicious. Of course, Fu Yunruo's culinary skills were not as exquisite and delicious as those made by professional chefs. However, there was a sense of home in her cooking. Although it was ordinary, it made people yearn for it day and night. If Siyu had a choice, he would prefer to eat such dishes every day. Of course, his heart ached for Fu Yunruo. How could he bear to let her work so hard every day? It was enough for him to eat such dishes once in a while. Fu Yunruo turned around and saw Siyu eating secretly. Fu Yunruo. A certain celebrity's image collapsed. Siyu noticed Fu Yunruo's gaze and coughed lightly. However, he still did not put down his chopsticks. Instead, he said righteously, "Let me try the taste for you." Fu Yunruo asked, "How is it?" "It's the most delicious dish in the world." Fu Yunruo laughed. "How can it be so good?" This was too exaggerated. "Try it if you don't believe me." Siyu picked up a small piece of meat and placed it next to Fu Yunruo's lips. Fu Yunruo looked at Siyu Ruo. Finally, under his urging, she opened her mouth and took a bite. Siyu smiled. "Isn't it?" Then, he picked up another piece and put it in his mouth. Indeed, his culinary skills seemed to have improved, but at most, it was above average. Fu Yunruo's cheeks turned slightly red. Then she said, "No matter how delicious it is, you can't eat it secretly. There are so many. I'll help you try the taste." When the sky darkened, the New Year's Eve dinner was ready. Plates of delicious food were served on the table. Fu Yunruo made a total of 12 dishes, including meat and vegetables. As there were old and young people, Siyu poured drinks for everyone. After the 4 of them sat down, they were not in a hurry to eat. Instead, they made a speech. As the oldest, Uncle Guo was the first to speak. The deepest and most ordinary wish of the elderly was for their children and grandchildren to be safe and healthy. Uncle Guo did not have any children and had dedicated his life to his beloved Lan Yi. Even when he was old, he still had a child like Fu Yunruo and a precious grandchild who allowed him to enjoy the joy of a family reunion. Then, Siyu, Fu Yunruo, and finally, Wenwen. Wenwen held a drink with both hands. His little face was filled with excitement. He looked at Fu Yunruo and Siyu Ruo before looking at Grandfather Guo. He felt that he was the happiest baby at this moment. In the past, he felt very blessed to have his mother by his side. Now that he had Siyu, his life was even more complete. Wenwen said loudly, "In the future, we have to celebrate like this every year as a family." The adults laughed. "Come, cheers. Happy New Year. Happy New Year." After the lively reunion dinner, there were many programs. The neighborhood was not like the countryside. At this time, people would go door to door to give New Year's greetings. Especially the children, they would swarm everywhere. However, it was still very lively. The television was playing the Spring Festival Gala program, and then the adults gave out red packets. Fu Yunruo and Siyu also received red packets. Uncle Guo gave one each. When Siyu gave Wenwen a red packet, he also gave Fu Yunruo one. When Fu Yunruo looked over, he said with a smile, "The little baby has a red packet. The big baby also has a red packet." It was obvious who the big baby was referring to. Fu Yunruo's face flushed red. In the end, she accepted the red packet. Recently, Siyu Ruo seemed to have opened up his conception and governor meridians. He was full of sweet nothings and was not as awkward as before. Wen received 3 big red packets. He put them in his pocket and did not stay idle. He played the role of a sweet and happy person and made the adults beam with joy. Although they were all over the world and could not pay New Year's greetings face to face, they did not stop paying New Year's greetings via video. They first paid New Year's greetings to Siyu's elders. Si Zheng and Xie Zhiyun were overflowing with love when they saw the little fairy-like grandchildren. If it were not for the fact that they could not leave their house, they would have wanted to have a family reunion. After that, Fu Yunruo had a video call with Uncle Mei and Auntie Mei. It was very lively on the other side. There were many children fighting to appear on camera and talk to Wen. They obviously still remembered Wen. As the adults went to support Wen, they specially booked a group to watch a movie and brought the children along. The children were very proud and often mentioned Wen. Naturally, they would not forget him so quickly. In addition to the New Year's atmosphere, everyone was full of joy because their hometown was changing day by day. They were full of hope for the future. Auntie Mei and Fu Yunruo talked endlessly and detailed the changes in the village. They even said that many young people in the village did not plan to go out to work this year. They all stayed at home and would start a small business or something. Even Auntie Mei and Uncle Mei's only son came back and did not plan to go out. Fu Yunruo looked at Auntie Mei's constant smile and looked much younger. Behind her, Uncle Mei tapped his pipe and relaxed his eyebrows. She thought to herself, how nice. After chatting, they sat on the sofa and ate snacks while watching the Spring Festival Gala. Every year, other than adding to the festive atmosphere of the Spring Festival, not many people would sit down to watch the Spring Festival Gala seriously. However, even if they did not watch it, every family would turn on the television to watch the Spring Festival Gala. Fu Yunruo happened to see an acquaintance among the people who went on stage to sing, so she sat down to watch. Among the celebrities wearing red robes, one of them was Axan Su. Last year, his luck was unstoppable. He had already swept many awards in one go and became the heavenly king of the singing world. He even held several concert tours. A song composed by him swept through the entire music industry from the moment it was released. It was still at the top of the list. Although they did not have many opportunities to meet, they would still greet each other on WeChat and were still very familiar with each other. After watching it, Fu Yunruo watched another skit and was amused. In the distance outside the floor-to-ceiling window, a bright firework suddenly lit up the dark night sky. Wen turned her head and ran to the floor-to-ceiling window to look up at the night sky. "Mommy, look at the fireworks." Fu Yunruo and the others walked over to watch the fireworks with Wen. After a while, Siyu left and came out with a box. She smiled and said to them, "Let's go and play with the fireworks too." Wen ran over cheering. They went out of the house and stood in the courtyard. The cold temperature outside could not extinguish their fiery hearts. The snow in the courtyard was swept clean and decorated with festive decorations. Siyu placed the box on the ground. There were big and small fireworks inside. Siyu placed the big one on the ground and then held Wen's chubby little hand to light it together. The little guy was still young, so the adults were naturally worried about him playing with dangerous fireworks alone. A few clusters of fireworks bloomed. It was not like the large-scale fireworks outside, but it was still very beautiful. Fu Yunruo took a short video of the fireworks and sent it backstage to congratulate her fans on the Happy New Year. After the fireworks, there were only some small fireworks played by children. Wenwen felt that it was not enough, so she continued to play with small fireworks. Siyu walked to Fu Yunruo and asked with a smile, "Do you want to play?" Fu Yunruo smiled and waved her hand. The lights in the distance were bright and neon lights were flickering. The fireworks in the sky were brilliant like stars. In the courtyard, Wenwen held the small fireworks and ran around excitedly. Uncle Gua held a cup of hot tea in his hand and watched with a smile. Fu Yunruo and Siyu stood under the roof and smiled as they watched Wenwen play with the small fireworks. Her little face was full of smiles and she was very happy. They turned their heads to look at each other at the same time. They looked into each other's eyes, which were filled with love and tenderness. It was as if they were looking at each other for 10,000 years. End of the article. Chapter 135. After the extravaganza, see you. I'm so lucky to have you. Cloud rolling clouds, please take care of me. See you. The attached picture was a picture of the two of them wearing the same ring and holding a marriage certificate. It was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples, instantly breaking the calmness of the internet and igniting a storm. As if feeling that the power was not enough, Siyu posted another post, directly stating that Wenwen was his biological son and attached a picture of an authoritative identification report. As for the various reasons, as it involved the personal matters of the parties involved, please forgive me. He only said that it was his fault in the past, and now that he had obtained Fu Yun's forgiveness, he also hoped that the fans would not overinterpret. The third post was that Siyu announced that he was officially retiring from acting and was going home to inherit the family business. Oh my god, oh my god. Married. Biological son. Retiring. There are too many rumors, which one should I scream first? What does brother you mean by this? I'm going crazy. The 3 pieces of news were too explosive. The fans were so dizzy from the explosion that they couldn't think. Their minds were only filled with the words In less than 3 minutes, the top 20 trending topics on all major social media platforms were all related to this topic. In less than 5 minutes, all the major online platforms crashed again and again, and there was no way to fix it. It was not until 3 hours later that some platforms with larger servers barely managed to stabilize. Although 3 hours had passed, regardless of whether it was fans or bystanders, all of them were very anxious, and all kinds of comments were increasing by tens of thousands every second. Congratulations! You're finally married. Brother Yu finally has a status. Little Moon is very happy. Zai Zai is Brother Yu's biological son. Am I seeing things? Brother Yu is retiring. No, woo, Brother Yu, don't go, to let the child have a proper status. Actually, there's no need for a duck. Regardless of whether he's related by blood or not, he's still Brother Yu's son, our baby. The comments were chaotic, and the fans were about to go crazy. There was too much information, and all of them were having trouble digesting it. Previously, they were still wishing the couple a happy marriage, but the next moment, they burst into tears. Siyu had actually officially retreated from the show. Then, they had to speculate about whether Wenwen's background was real or not, and what had happened in between. They also had to imagine the 100,000-word plot. It was too tiring, and their heads were about to explode. In the past 2 years, Siyu hadn't released any new works. There were rumors in the industry, and there were also private discussions among fans that their brother was going to become a behind-the-scenes producer and stop filming. However, as long as Siyu didn't make an official announcement, they still held on to hope. In the end, she announced her retreat. Countless fans begged Siyu to stay and not quit the show. Even if some of them threatened to become his haters, they couldn't change his mind. After crying, she even wished them well. In an instant, the fans experienced what it meant to have all kinds of flavors in life. The hot search lasted for an entire month. Countless fans rushed to their official social media accounts, wailing and crying. Fortunately, Yuan Axayan had been monitoring the comments online, and overall, it didn't go out of control. Seeing that the popularity had finally died down, he heaved a sigh of relief. He really owed Siyu a lot in his previous life. He usually kept a low profile, but once he caused trouble, he made a big fuss. He also didn't understand that he was old and hadn't had a good rest for almost a month. However, he also understood that these three things would have to be announced sooner or later. Each of them could cause an earthquake. Siyu didn't want to be on the hot search list every few days, so they decided to announce them all together. That was why this month's incident happened. After the fans calmed down, they realized that everything was traceable. To be precise, it was just an official confirmation. Although Siyu and Fu Yun's relationship hadn't been officially announced, there were many rumors. Many fans and passers-by said that they had seen them act intimately in public, and the fans were well aware of it. After being a fan of Siyu for so many years, he had never been involved in any scandals. Only the scandal with Fu Yun had not been suppressed or clarified. This was a piece of news. Especially when Siyu accidentally appeared on camera during Fu Yun's live broadcast. Because of this, they were on the hot search list for 3 days. At that time, if Fu Yun only said that she was a friend, Siyu would also explain that they were friends. However, from between the lines, they felt that Siyu felt wronged. They even teased when they would give their brother Yu a status. They were all waiting for the official announcement and when Siyu would be given a status. They didn't expect that they would directly receive the news that they had registered their marriage. As for the fact that Wenwen was Siyu's biological son, there were already people who said that Wenwen resembled Siyu. They didn't look alike, but they had some small habits and temperament. However, no one took it seriously. They only felt that it was because the child had learned a lot from the adults and looked a little alike. In the end, Siyu threw such a huge bomb at them. Regardless of the truth, most of Siyu's fans believed what they said. They felt that if it wasn't true, why did they have to make such an unnecessary move? After all, if he married Fu Yun, he would be considered as a son. There was still a difference. A stepson was different from a biological son. The fans were mentally exhausted. Perhaps it was because the 3 pieces of news were too shocking that they accepted it well. Slowly, they digested the 3 pieces of news. Then, they realized that although Siyu had retreated from acting, he had not completely left the entertainment industry. Recently, many high-quality films and television dramas had Siyu's investment behind them. Slowly, they accepted it. It didn't matter. As long as there were traces of their brother and they knew how he was doing, it didn't matter if he didn't act anymore. If he could be a boss, he wouldn't have to work so hard as an actor. They just had to watch one less movie every year. It didn't matter. They still had their children. Compared to Siyu, Wenwen had surpassed him. At such a young age, his acting skills were so natural and full of spirit. It was amazing. They could still be fans for 10,000 years. After Siyu left the entertainment industry, his fans still silently followed him. His private life was not as tightly hidden as before. Then, from time to time, Siyu's private life would spread in the fan club. Some people who still couldn't accept the fact that Siyu had retreated from acting were also able to accept this situation. Brother Yu was going to inherit the family business. He was going to have a great harvest in both love and career. What else could they do? If they had money and love, who would still work so hard? Furthermore, after Siyu and Fu Yun got married, he would openly appear in Fu Yun's live broadcast. From time to time, he would appear in a circle to declare his sovereignty. While the internet was boiling over, Yundua's family members had mixed feelings. They were happy that their idols had found a good match, but they were also sad that their idols had been snatched away. The sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy feelings were extremely satisfying. The messages in the group chat were also constantly updated. Many of the managers of the fan club had a common group chat. They communicated with each other on how to guide the fans well and also shared their thoughts. The managers had been fans for many years. However, the internet was so big and the fan base was so large. There were always some irrational and brainless fans. However, those voices and anti-fan keyboard warriors were drowned out by the waves of blessings and didn't cause any ripples. After the fans were overjoyed, they started to the person involved and expressed that they wanted to see the wedding. They had to see their idols get married with their own eyes. They wouldn't be satisfied if they only saw the wedding photos and didn't even see the wedding photos. The popularity that had just died down instantly rose again. Everyone Siyu and Fu Yun, requesting to see the wedding. Fu Yun and Siyu naturally saw everyone's requests online and instantly hesitated. Her wedding with Siyu would be held in the Si family's main house in a month's time. Now, they were preparing for the wedding. They had originally planned to keep a low profile, but so many fans wanted to see it. Fu Yun's heart softened when she saw the old fans who were usually active in the live broadcast crying. However, it wasn't appropriate for the Si family to be exposed. In the end, they thought of a way. When the time came, they would choose a segment of the wedding video and post it online. As for the live broadcast, it was impossible. As for the wedding photos, they had taken many of them. Fu Yun chose a portion of them and posted it online. It made the fans cry and made it to the hot search list a few times. The two of them were too compatible. They were simply the male and female leads in novels. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. Their temperament was good too. On the day of the wedding, Fu Yun and Siyu only invited their close friends and family. They didn't invite the media. If the media filmed the wedding, it would shock not only China but the whole world. The royal family of each country, the business world's top talents. They were all world-class figures. Other than the relatives of the people involved, those who didn't have enough status were not qualified to receive an invitation. This was a low-key but not low-key wedding of the century. It was destined to be the center of attention. At this moment, regardless of whether it was fans or passers-by, they had already become popular. Although they couldn't know what was going on and couldn't watch the live broadcast, Fu Yun and Siyu promised to release a video of the wedding. They were all looking forward to it. For the entire day, they had been waiting on social media. The news was already trending. The fans had carefully chosen the topics to give their blessings and were neatly ranked in the top 5 of the hot search list. They had already been waiting on the official account, giving their blessings and waiting. At the same time, the fans had bought huge advertising space in all the major landmark cities to express their blessings to Fu Yun and Siyu. The people in the city, even if they didn't care about the entertainment industry and the live broadcast industry, could see this good news when they looked up. Countless men and women were sighing. When would they also have such a happy life? Heaven didn't disappoint those who waited. They finally received the wedding video. The first video was a behind-the-scenes video. It showed Fu Yun wearing an exquisite and elegant wedding dress and putting on makeup. She was accompanied by a group of relatives and friends. They saw how Fu Yun looked in the wedding dress in the video. She was so beautiful. The one-of-a-kind wedding dress, the one-of-a-kind jewelry, and the one-of-a-kind person. The fans were so excited that their eyes were brimming with tears. Their Yun was the most beautiful bride. The second video was of the wedding scene. Fu Yun-ruo was holding on to a spirited old man as they walked down the red carpet. Then, the old man handed Fu Yun-ruo to the groom, Siyu. Amidst the thunderous applause, Fu Yun-ruo held on to Siyu's arm as they walked up the stage. The MC read the vows. Miss Fu Yun-ruo, are you willing to marry Mr. Siyu? In the future, regardless of whether you are rich or poor, in sickness or in health, or even in death, you will love him, respect him, and be loyal to him. Are you willing? Fu Yun-ruo replied solemnly, I am willing. Then, the MC looked at Siyu and asked, Mr. Siyu, are you willing to marry Miss Fu Yun-ruo? In the days to come. Siyu looked at Fu Yun-ruo and said seriously, I am willing to marry Fu Yun-ruo, regardless of whether you are rich or poor. I will love you, respect you, and be loyal to you. I will accompany you for the rest of my life, and I will never leave you, until the end of time. Not only did Siyu recite the marriage vows, he even added on to his promise. Fu Yun-ruo looked into Siyu's eyes, which were filled with deep affection. Fu Yun-ruo knew that Siyu could do it, so she smiled blissfully and said, Me too. When the two of them looked at each other affectionately, Wen, who was dressed in a gown, walked up the stage and gave the couple the rings. After the groom and the bride exchanged their rings, the MC said, The groom can kiss the bride now. Siyu and Fu Yun-ruo looked at each other and squatted down at the same time. They stretched out their hands to Wen and said, Wen, come here. Wen blinked and walked forward. Fu Yun-ruo and Siyu each hugged Wen with one hand and kissed Wen's tender little face. Wen's little face flushed red. Then, under the kind laughter of the guests, she ran off the stage with lipstick stains on her face and buried herself in Xie arms. Siyu helped Fu Yun-ruo stand up. They looked at each other and smiled. Then, Siyu lowered his head and kissed her. When the fans saw the most important moment, they were so emotional that tears welled up in their eyes. Although the faces of the guests, other than Fu Yun-ruo's family of 3, did not appear in the video, they saw the most important scene of the wedding ceremony. It was already very satisfying. They were so touched. Hence, the enthusiasm of the fans caused the server to crash once again. The trending topic was once again on the hot search list for a week before it went down. After the wedding, the family of 3 completely kept a low profile. The fans also returned to being Buddhist. In the fan group, all of them were in a state of retirement. Occasionally, they would dig out their old memories and eat them. Fu Yun-ruo and Siyu went on their honeymoon, while Wen went to school at the Si family's house. That's right, school. After half a year of fooling around, Wen was finally thrown to school by the heartless Siyu. He had to go to school every day and was now a glorious primary school student. At the same time, Wen also entered the Si family's genealogy book and became a real member of the Si family. He also had a new name, Si Chin. Fu Yun-ruo thought that since she and Siyu were getting married, Wen returning to the Si family was something that everyone would be happy to hear. She was not obsessed with Wen's surname. There was nothing in the Fu family that was worth remembering. If the child's surname was Si, he would be able to integrate into the Si family and get along well with the Si family. There was no need for her to be bothered about this. The name Fu Wen was used as a stage name. It was also considered another name. In the future, he would use this name for external activities. Wen's carefree days were cut off from then on. He was stunned. Not only did he have to go to school on time, but he also had to attend all kinds of elite classes and classes for prospective heirs. He wanted to go back to the days of following Fu Yun-ruo and Siyu all day long. When QAQ after the shock of breaking news, the fans felt that they had been through hundreds of battles and that there was nothing that could make them make a fuss about it. In the end, half a year later, there was a sudden reversal that stunned the fans again. In Fu Yun Ruo's live stream, from the moment she started live streaming, Mr. Digital, who had occupied the top of the reward list, was CU's alias. The fans, so this was actually an inspirational drama about true love fans pursuing their goddess. The fans reacted, especially Fu Yun Ruo's boyfriend fans, girlfriend fans, husband fans, and wife fans. They were instantly excited. They were together with Yun Yun. As for the reason why the alias was exposed, it was naturally because a tall, rich, and handsome fan suddenly appeared in the live stream. This fan was Fu Yun Ruo's boyfriend fan. Even though his goddess was already married and had a child, he still expressed that he did not mind and wanted to pursue Fu Yun Ruo. Then, he spent a lot of money and even used his background to open up the live stream's reward list. He was determined to become the #1 person on the reward list. However, after so many years, how could the #1 Mr. Digital tolerate his position being threatened? After so many years, the total amount of rewards that Mr. Digital gave had reached a terrifying ratio. Everyone guessed that this Mr. Digital should be a fighter jet among the rich and powerful. He even gave them fan benefits many times and had all kinds of lucky draws. Even so, this Mr. Digital was still very low-key. Hence, he was very prestigious in Yunduo's fan club. Now that there was a person who wanted to be a male mistress jumping up and down, they did not recognize him as a fan. They felt that it was embarrassing and even discussed in the group about how to suppress this flea. The fans expressed that this fighter jet among the rich had been a fan of their goddess for so many years, but he did not use his power to threaten or tempt their goddess. He quietly became a true love fan and never overstepped his boundaries or caused trouble. This was the role model of a true love fan. This flea was too self-righteous. CU, the true love fan who never overstepped his boundaries, hence, no one knew whether it was intentional or not, but CU fell in front of this fan who clamored that he was the one who loved Fu Yun Ruo the most. Okay, Yun Yun's #1 fan was together with Yun Yun. Yun Yun's #1 fan was CU, the actor who had won countless awards. Okay, they knew. What kind of love did they have? The fans could not remain calm. Every time they felt that they were full of dog food, they would find ways to stuff more dog food into their mouths. They wanted to protest. Hence, the topic online was no longer about a fan confessing to a married broadcaster, but about that scheming bastard. Fu Yun Ruo, who had also just found out about CU's identity, she looked at the calm man suspiciously. Have you been harboring ill intentions towards me since a long time ago? Fu Yun Ruo thought that CU had probably found out when she fell in love with him back then. She did not expect him to hide it so well. CU smiled innocently. How is it bad intentions? This is clearly fate. Fu Yun Ruo's face was full of disbelief. Tell me, what else are you hiding from me? CU raised his hand and swore, no, definitely not. If I'm lying to you, I'll punish Wen so that she won't be able to lose weight. Wen, who had been raised to be as round as a pearl and as smooth as jade, was suddenly cued. She raised her head in confusion. When he realized that his chubby little body had been used as an oath, he snorted heavily. In 2 years, he would be able to slim down. This oath was not effective at all. Hence, he said crisply, Mommy, Daddy is still hiding something from you. If I lie, Daddy will get fat in his middle age. CU Ruo, Fu Yun Ruo. Pfft. The little brat was still the most ruthless. In order not to get fat in his middle age, CU could only come clean. I was the one who caused the Chang family to go bankrupt. Fu Yun Ruo crossed her arms. Anything else? The house next to yours was not a coincidence. I bought it on purpose. Anything else? That house of yours is actually mine too. I was the one who passed the news to you through someone else. I carefully selected that neighborhood. Anything else? The big investor in the village is me. See, you had indeed hidden a lot of things from Fu Yunruo. Fu Yunruo's gaze became very dangerous. After Siyu finished explaining everything, he hurriedly raised his hands and said fawningly, "Nothing else, really nothing else. I didn't mean to hide it from you." I was wrong. Wen had already jumped off the stool and ran away when Siyu was explaining everything. Then, he ran over breathlessly, carrying a durian that was bigger than his body. A pair of bright eyes peeked out from the durian. Wen placed the durian on the ground in front of Siyu and said excitedly, "Mommy, I brought the durian over for you." Fu Yunruo patted Wen's head approvingly. Then, she looked at Siyu Ruo and said, "Okay, look at how considerate your son is. You can do as you see fit." Siyu Ruo. This was really a good son. Chapter 136. And then there was the second part. It was a high-end nursing home on the outskirts of the capital city. It was famous for its beautiful and quiet environment, professional nursing team and privacy. Many rich and powerful retired people in the capital city would stay here for a period of time, and many of them would enjoy their retirement here. On a quiet green path, a caregiver pushed a gray-haired, doddering old man out for a stroll. And the man in the wheelchair was Fu Zonghong. Over the past 3 to 4 years, his body had aged very quickly. He had forced himself to take charge of the Fu family in the hope that he could hand over the prosperous Fu family to Wen in the future. But his body would not be able to hold on until the day when Wen grew up. After the company collapsed one time, his health deteriorated and he no longer had the energy to take charge of such a big company. Luckily, he was prepared and had groomed a capable agent to take over the company. Luckily, the handover was timely and the agent was very capable. Soon, Fu's enterprise, which was in chaos because of Fu Zonghong's collapse, was stabilized. Seeing that the situation had stabilized, Fu Zonghong lived in the nursing home with peace of mind. The nurse pushed him to the side of a lake. In front of him was a green lake surrounded by green grass. Because the lake was running water, there were many fish in it. The elderly who were free would come over to fish to kill time. There were also children who came to visit and accompany the elderly playing on the grass. Even he could hear their childish laughter clearly. Fu Zonghong looked at the peaceful and lively scene in front of him. His eyebrows relaxed and he could not help but smile. His eyes, which were already a little cloudy, were suddenly enlightened. He thought of the grandchildren he rarely saw and his daughter. Now that they had found a good home, he could rest assured. Fu Zonghong went to attend his daughter's wedding 2 years ago. Unfortunately, he could only watch from afar and could not bring his daughter to a new life as a father. He could not give her his blessings in person either. He was even afraid that she would be unhappy to see him, so he could only watch from afar. He hoped that he could be forgiven by Fu Yunruo, but he realized that he might not be able to live until that day. All these years, the more he thought about the past, the more guilty he felt. He had let Fu Yun down. After so many years of what he had done, no matter how warm her heart was, it had been broken by him. The mistake had already been made. Even if Fu Zonghong wanted to make amends, she no longer needed it. Ever since Fu Yun told him that the person who had the right to forgive him was no longer around, he had countless nightmares. He dreamed that his daughter had left the world alone because of his coldness and neglect. He was awakened countless times, his heart filled with grief. However, he didn't dare to think too much about it. He saw that Yun Ruo was still alive in the human world and that she was doing well. That was enough. However, he also wanted to do his part. Ever since he found out what kind of family Fu Yunruo had married into, he knew that the Fu family's assets were nothing in their eyes. However, this was the Fu family's hard work after all. Whether it was in the past or in the future, his only successor was Fu Yunruo. For a family like that, if she didn't have enough dowry, no matter how good the person she married into was, there would still be people in the family who would look down on her. Fu Zonghong was worried that Fu Yunruo and her son wouldn't have a good life in the Si family. Hence, Fu Zonghong still hoped that this could be a guarantee for Fu Yunruo and her son. He wanted to use the entire Fu family as a dowry for Fu Yunruo and her son. However, until now, he hadn't been able to see Fu Yunruo and her son. Fu Zonghong sighed. He had been muddle-headed for half of his life. He had pushed his only daughter away from him. Now that he was all alone, he deserved it. In fact, there were medical staff on standby 24 hours a day. There were also 4 nurses who took turns to look after him. The environment of the convalescent home was good, and there were also other residents to interact with. These days were relaxing and happy. The only regret was that his other old friends had family members who came to visit them from time to time. He was the only one who was truly all alone. A nurse walked over and asked respectfully, "Sir, Mrs. Fong wants to visit you. Do you want to meet her?" Fu Zonghong was silent. After a while, he sighed. It wasn't that no one came to visit him. There were still people who came to visit him. This Mrs. Fong was his ex-wife. Ever since she found out that he was staying in this convalescent home, she had been wanting to meet him. Fu Zonghong's expression was complicated, but he didn't agree to meet her. After being married for so many years, it was impossible to say that they didn't have feelings for each other. The older one got, the more nostalgic they were. However, he still remembered her cold words. How could he not know what Fong Wanting was thinking? She wanted to soften his heart so that she could become Mrs. Fu again and live a good life again. Although Fu Zonghong didn't do anything to the Chang family, Fong Wanting, and her daughter, he watched coldly from the sidelines. They didn't have a good life. He used to think that Fong Wanting was at least devoted to her only daughter. However, it was only now that he realized that she was an extremely selfish person. Once it involved her own interests, she would abandon her own daughter, even if it was her own. Before the fall of the Chang family, Fong Wanping still had some patience for Fong Shuiruo, who could still marry into the Chang family. However, Fong Wanping's attitude changed after the Chang family went bankrupt and was driven out of the capital in a sorry state. It was as if the Chang family had become a burden to her, and she was worried that they would cling on to her. The money and property that Fu Zonghong gave her was her only source of income. She would definitely hold on to it tightly and wouldn't let anyone take it away from her, even if it was her own daughter. Fu Zonghong said lightly, "I don't want to see her." Then he said, "Push me back." Other people's family happiness was always his extravagant wish. Fu Zonghong didn't think about anything else. The only thing he wanted was to hand over the Fu family to Fu Yun and her daughter before he died. Although it was a nursing home, it wasn't the kind that had multiple rooms on one floor where the elderly lived. Instead, it was a standalone villa. Every villa was accompanied by a complete professional team. The annual expenses were very high, but those who could live in it were all rich. When he returned to the villa, his assistant, who had been the vice president for many years, came to see Fu Zonghong. When Fu Zonghong saw the vice president, he asked, "Did he agree to see you?" The vice president bowed slightly and answered respectfully, "Yes, he said that he will come to visit you in 2 days' time." Fu Zonghong's eyebrows relaxed slightly. At the entrance of the nursing home, Fong Wanting heard the security guards reply again. She bit her lips and left unwillingly. She hadn't had an easy time in the past few years. Although compared to most people, her life was much better, but there was always a comparison. No matter what, it couldn't be compared to the good life when she was Madame Fu. After living a pampered life for 20 years, how could she be willing to go back to the days when she had to think twice about buying jewelry? Feng Wanting always felt that she didn't do anything and that she was implicated by Feng Shui. Even if Fu Zonghong was angry with her, it had been a long time, right? Unfortunately, a few years had passed and she still hadn't found a chance to get close to him. When she found out that he was staying at the nursing home, she went to check in every day. She felt that Fu Zonghong, who was alone in the nursing home, needed someone to take care of him. If she expressed her concern and sincerity, wouldn't he be more soft-hearted? Feng Wanting had a good plan, but she didn't expect that she wouldn't be able to see him until now. She could only look for other opportunities. 2 days later, a handsome man in casual clothes and sunglasses appeared at the nursing home surrounded by bodyguards. Not long after, he stood in front of Fu Zonghong. Chairman Fu. Fu Zonghong's face tensed up. See you. Fu Zonghong's gaze swept behind him. He was slightly disappointed when he didn't see the person he wanted to see. The person who came was Siyu. Have a seat. Fu Zonghong didn't beat around the bush and said directly, I know that the Si family doesn't care about the Fu family's assets, but I hope that you can persuade Yunruo to accept it. It's all hers. Siyu sat opposite Fu Zonghong. Fu Zonghong was his father-in-law in name, but what if his wife didn't approve of him? Therefore, Siyu was polite and distant to Fu Zonghong. Chairman Fu, you're making things difficult for me. Ruoruo once said that she wouldn't accept it. Ruoruo has the final say in the family, I can't go against her wishes. Fu Zonghong only came because he was Ruoruo's blood relative and he knew that his days were numbered. Siyu said casually, she said that she would rather you donate it all than accept it. Fu Zonghong was silent for a while. Even if I donate it, I'll accept it first. You can do whatever you want with it. The Fu family has her mother's blood, sweat, and tears. Fu Yun's mother was a very outstanding woman. She had contributed greatly to the Fu family's development. Siyu raised his eyebrows. He wasn't surprised. I'll pass on the message. You, be nice to Yun Ruo and Wen. Fu Zonghong knew that he wasn't in a position to say these things, but even if he was an incompetent father, he still had to say these words. You can't let them suffer. Yun Ruo hasn't lived a happy life in the past 20 years. I hope that all of you will be well, Siyu said, I will. This was his responsibility. The estranged father-in-law and son-in-law chatted for a while. In the end, Siyu said goodbye when he saw that it was about time. Take care of yourself. After Siyu left the convalescent home, he rushed to the airport. This time, he came back from abroad on a private jet. After meeting Fu Zonghong, he took another private jet back. Ever since Wen started studying at the Si family school, Fu Yun considered seriously and decided to move over to live there. A child's childhood was only a few years, and it was irreversible. Fu Yun still hoped that she could watch Wen grow up. Therefore, after persuading Uncle Guo, she built a flower garden at a suitable place in the Fu family's house and cultivated orchids with Uncle Guo. After so many years, Fu Yun cultivated more than 1 pot of mutated orchids, which was worth more than 10 million yuan. She was quite famous in the orchids industry. She would still do a live broadcast, but she rarely showed her face. Just like in the beginning, she only focused on the process of cultivating the orchids. This time, Siyu returned to China alone to meet Fu Zonghong. He didn't inform Fu Yun in advance. The moment he returned home, he immediately confessed to Fu Yun. When Fu Yun heard Siyu's explanation, she was silent for a moment. Siyu quickly coaxed, I'm sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have asked for your opinion first. If you're still angry, punish me. But can I kneel on something else this time? I think the washboard I bought last time is pretty good. Siyu had a strong desire to live. He felt that kneeling on a durian was too much of a scam. He might as well kneel on a washboard. Fu Yun couldn't help but laugh. Then, she stopped smiling. I'm not angry. Really? Siyu carefully looked at her expression. If I say that I still don't want to see him, will you think that I'm cold-hearted? Fu Yun couldn't help but ask. She was living a good life now, and all the hardships she had suffered in the past were over. If this matter were to spread, she would probably be scolded by a bunch of people, right? No matter what, he was still her biological father. He was already regretting it now, yet he still insisted on leaving all the family assets to her. He had already compensated her, yet he was still so pretentious. Fu Yun said, I always feel that the first 20 years of my life and the life after I met you were separate. I always feel that the person who suffered in the past wasn't me, so I feel that I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness now. I'm not the person involved. As she spoke, she felt that she was speaking incoherently. Finally, she looked at Siyu with a hopeful gaze. Do you understand what I mean? Siyu hugged Fu Yun and said softly, I understand. No matter what decision you make, I'll support you. Blood ties are the most magical bond in the world. Humans are born to be close to their blood relatives. This is human nature. Even if you're riddled with wounds by your blood relatives, deep in your heart, you still hope to be close to them. But if you're really hurt too deeply, your heart will turn cold, so cold that you'll even give up on your instincts. The person who's in the most pain is you, not others. My heart aches for you. Fu Yun's tears fell just like that. She leaned into Siyu's embrace and felt that there was still someone in this world who understood her. She also loved the original owner so much, so how could she forgive her? Siyu gently wiped away her tears. Don't cry. I promised that I wouldn't let you cry. You can't cry anymore, otherwise, Wen will be angry. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone. Fu Yun shook her head. She suddenly felt relieved. The next time you go, bring Wen to see them. She didn't want to see them because it was between her and the original owner. But Wen was her grandson after all, and Siyu was her son-in-law. The matter of the Fu family would be forgotten with the passage of time. In the end, the world would only see Fu Zonghong living the rest of his life alone. They would pity him, and then they would start to criticize those relatives who never showed up. After all, Fu Yun didn't really leave the Fu family, and Fu Zonghong didn't chase her out of the family like in the original novel. She didn't want the two most important people to her to be criticized because of this matter many years later. Therefore, Siyu would bring Wen to see them when she had time in the future. It wasn't a big deal to see them occasionally. As for her, it didn't matter if others criticized her. In the future, she would only see them one last time because they were related by blood. Siyu lowered her head and kissed Fu Yun. She felt pity in her heart. Okay. Chapter 137. A Dream of Golden Millet 1. Hey! Wake up, don't pretend to be asleep. Wake up. Wen was woken up by the cold. Specifically, it was not because of the cold, but because of the discomfort in his body. He clutched his head and sat up dizzily. A dirty kid wearing patched clothes saw that the little bean on the ground had woken up and quickly retracted his foot. Then, he said angrily, I knew you were faking it. I'm telling you, Chi Wen. In the future, you better obediently give me your steamed buns. Otherwise, I'll hit you again, okay? Wen felt pain everywhere. He had a headache, was dizzy, and his stomach was cramping from hunger. He felt weak all over, and his limbs were aching. He was also very cold. However, there was still a cacophony of noise in his ears. Wen impatiently scolded, "Shut up." The voice that came out of his mouth was soft and full of childishness. Wen was stunned for a moment. Ever since his little body started to twitch, his childishness had slowly faded. It had the crispness and vitality of a youth. This childishness, did he have this voice when he was 3 or 4 years old? When the kid heard the scolding on the ground, he immediately kicked him. "You little brat, are you tired of living? How dare you scold me? See if I don't." "Chi Qian, are you bullying a child again?" An adult's voice sounded. The child named Chi Qian quickly withdrew his foot and ran away before the adult came over. Chi Qian. Wen took a long time to recall this name from his dizzy head. Not long after, a short but very stout woman walked over cursing. "Hurry up and come over here. Why are you lying on the ground? You dirtied your clothes and want to change, right? Do you have anything to change into?" "Chi Wen. I'm talking to you. Hurry up and get up." "Chi Wen." Wen raised his head and saw a familiar face in the depths of his memory. After a long time, he remembered that this was Mother Mo from the orphanage. Wen's expression suddenly changed. He turned his head and looked around. What he saw was a dilapidated and desolate courtyard, and he was sitting on the dirty ground. This was an orphanage. Was he reborn again? Wen lowered his head and looked at his black, claw-like hands. Was this when he was reborn in the orphanage? What about Mom? Was his mother still around at this time? Wen was terrified. Then, he was rudely pulled up. "You brat, you don't want to live anymore. You didn't even respond when I called you." Wen raised her head, her unusually large eyes filled with tears. Mother Mo still wanted to scold her, but she didn't do it in the end. Instead, she walked away while cursing. "Cry, cry, cry. Will you get candy if you cry?" Wen stood alone for a moment before she calmed down. Wen thought that he must calm down. He had to find a way to leave the orphanage and find his parents first. Wen wiped her tears, leaving an even darker mark on her face. He rubbed his stomach. He was so hungry that he didn't feel hungry at all. He had to figure out his situation first. Wen dragged his sore and weak body into the house. He had been pampered and spoiled for more than 10 years. Whenever there was a cut on his hand, there would be a circle of people around him to feel sorry for him. Now, his whole body hurt, but there was no one around him to feel sorry for him. Wen felt even more wronged, and tears almost came out of his eyes. What was going on? He was just sleeping. Why did he return to his childhood in his previous life when he woke up? He didn't want to experience it again, he was living so happily now. Why did he have to be reborn? Could it be that it was just a dream? Could it be that this was his real rebirth? No, it couldn't be. His experience was so real. It couldn't be a dream. He must have a chance to go back. Wen's thoughts ran wild as he entered the house. On the other side of the corridor, a thin and weak child timidly poked his head out. Chi Wen, when he saw Chi Wen looking over, the child slowly walked out. He grabbed the corner of his dirty clothes and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Chi Wen. I didn't run away on purpose. I was afraid that he wanted to snatch my steamed buns too." Chi Wen looked at him. Looking at the child who was half a head taller than him, he felt that he looked familiar. However, he had already forgotten his name. He only remembered that he hadn't seen him since he grew up. Chi Wen didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Take me back to my room." He needed to lie down and organize his thoughts. However, he had already forgotten where he lived. He could only let the child in front of him take him there. Oh. Oh. The child hurriedly led Chi-Wen forward and pushed open an old door with peeling paint. Chi-Wen looked around. There were more than 10 densely packed old bunk beds. Other than the bed, there wasn't even a cabinet in the room. The child's belongings were basically piled up on his bed. It was a mess. However, the children didn't have much of their own belongings. Which bed is mine? I want to lie down. The child hurriedly pointed to the outermost bunk bed and hurriedly said, "Hurry up and lie down." After Chi-Wen lay down, the child said worriedly, "Chi-Wen, are you okay? Did you hit your head?" The child remembered that before he ran away, he saw Chi-Wen hit his head with his fist. Chi-Wen opened his eyes and looked at the dark ceiling of the bed. He didn't say anything. It wasn't that he was cold, but he felt uncomfortable everywhere. His whole body was soft and weak. He just wanted to sleep and never wake up. He didn't know if he would go back the moment he opened his eyes after falling asleep. The child hesitated for a moment. He found half a steamed bun that he had just hidden under his bed. After thinking for a moment, he carefully broke off a quarter of the steamed bun and hid it back. Then, he took the big steamed bun and ran over to Chi-Wen. He reluctantly said, "Hurry up and eat it." Chi-Wen opened his eyes and looked at the cold and hard steamed bun in his hand. He didn't care that it was dirty. He hurriedly put it into his mouth. After 2 bites, he swallowed it. "Water," the child hurriedly patted Chi-Wen's back. "How are you? Are you okay?" "There's no water at home." They had to go to the canteen to drink water. They didn't have water here. Chi-Wen choked for a long time before he recovered. This time, he slowly ate the steamed bun in small mouthfuls. Was his life in the orphanage so difficult? The child swallowed his saliva and looked at Chi-Wen. "I'll give you the steamed bun. You won't ignore me, right? If I don't run away, Chi-Wen will definitely snatch both of our steamed bun." Chi-Wen finished half of the cold and hard steamed bun. With some food in his stomach, he felt even hungrier. However, he finally had a little strength. Under the child's nagging, he finally remembered which year he had returned to. He was 6 years old now. He remembered that at this time, the canteen's dinner was a steamed bun. However, the uncle in the canteen didn't want to wait for them to finish eating. He wanted to close the door and leave early, so he chased them out of the canteen and locked the door. The food in the canteen wasn't enough to fill their stomachs every day. They were hungry every day. Therefore, when the adults left, the older children who were more domineering would snatch the steamed buns from the younger children. Chi-Wen wanted to snatch Chi-Wen's steamed bun. When the other children saw the older children snatching it, they quickly ran away, afraid that they would be snatched away too. Of course, Chi-Wen wouldn't let it happen. Therefore, he fought with Chi-Wen. Chi-Wen had been hungry since he was young. He was skinny and skinny. At the age of 6, he was shorter than a 3 or 4-year-old child. Even if he had a fierce spirit in his bones, he couldn't beat Chi-Wen, who was a few years older and stronger than him. Chi-Wen remembered that he was knocked unconscious and laid on the cold ground for half a day. In the end, he even had a fever. The director scolded him for half a month because he wasted money. Chi-Wen thought to himself. So it was at this time. But now that he was here and hadn't been lying on the ground for long, he shouldn't be sick. Chi-Wen lay on the bed for a while. Then, he suddenly sat up. The child who had been rambling on and on was startled, and then he shut his mouth. Chi-Wen looked at the child in front of him. "What's your name?" The child looked at Chi-Wen. Suddenly, he pouted and tears flowed down his face. Chi-Wen, is your head really damaged? Don't you remember me? I'm Daodu. Chi-Wen's head hurt from the crying. I remember. This Daodu used to follow him around when he was young. He was 1 year younger than him. Although he was also skinny, he was taller than him. Daodu wasn't in the orphanage when he was a baby. He was sent here half a year ago. He remembered that not long after, Daodu was adopted. After that, there was no news of him. Daodu's eyes were brimming with tears. Really? Really? Chi-Wen got off the bed and looked at Daodu. Follow me. Daodu wiped his tears and followed behind Chi-Wen. Where are we going? We're going to look for food. Of course, he wanted to look for food while he still had some energy. He really didn't know how he survived in the past. Now, he felt like he was going to starve to death at any time. Oh, the only place to eat in the orphanage was the kitchen. Hence, Chi-Wen brought Daodu to the kitchen first. The door to the canteen was locked. They couldn't enter, so naturally, they couldn't enter the kitchen. The door lock was invincible to children, but to Chi-Wen, who had the intelligence of an adult, it was a piece of cake. Chi-Wen asked Daodu to keep a lookout for him. Then, he found some tools and after a while, he managed to unlock a very simple lock. Chi-Wen quietly went in and closed the door. Although it was called a canteen, it was actually a small room of about 20 to 30 square meters. There were small tattered tables and stools in the room. On the other side of the small room, there was a door. This was the kitchen. The kitchen wasn't big. Although this was an orphanage, there weren't many orphans. Hence, there weren't many government subsidies. Moreover, the internet wasn't very developed. Their source of income was the occasional donations from the nearby residents. Their clothes and toys were all donated by the nearby residents. In addition, they also had the savings of the director, which barely supported them. Hence, Chi-Wen didn't hate the director. Although the director was fierce and didn't treat them well, he still gave them a place to stay. However, he really hated this uncle who cooked for them every day. Originally, with their source of income, they could have enough to eat and wear. However, a part of the money used to buy ingredients was embezzled by this uncle. That was why they had to suffer so much. The director also trusted this uncle chef very much. This uncle chef was a distant relative of his. He came over to help enthusiastically and didn't ask for a high salary. Hence, he had always trusted this uncle chef. Perhaps because he trusted the lock on the outside, the kitchen door wasn't locked. It was just ajar. Chi-Wen went in and looked around. There were very few ingredients in the kitchen. It was impossible to have meat. There were only a few green vegetables. They were yellow and withered. Presumably, they were their lunch dishes. The most abundant thing in the kitchen was rice. However, they wouldn't be able to eat rice. That was a treat that only happened during festivals. Usually, they would only eat porridge. In the end, Chi-Wen took a small pot and grabbed a few handfuls of rice. He knew that this pot was used by the chef for special treatment. There were only 3 green vegetables. If one was missing, it would be discovered immediately. However, if the rice was missing, it might not be discovered. Wen wanted to cook a few more times. Hence, he took some rice and matches with him. When he came out, he would lock the door again. At night, he would sneak back in to return the pot. Daodu was shocked when she saw Chi-Wen come out with a small pot. Chi-Wen shushed her and left secretly with Daodu. The location of the orphanage was very desolate. Chi-Wen and Daodu found a secluded place. They found some firewood, washed the rice, and cooked it. Then, they shared it. Daodu smacked her lips in satisfaction. She touched her stomach and said, it's so delicious. So this is the feeling of being full. Wen was also full. They had been hungry for a long time. Their appetite had long become small. Half a bowl of rice was enough to fill them up. At this time, the sky was a little dark. Now that it was autumn, the weather began to turn cold. They didn't have many thick clothes. It was estimated that this year would be difficult for them again. Wen looked at his black claws and seemed to smell something strange. After temporarily solving the problem of food and clothing, Chi-Wen paid attention to himself. He couldn't stand the dirt on his body, so he went to a nearby canal and began to wash his hands. The water was cold. As soon as he put his hands down, he was shocked by the cold. He dipped his hands into the water. The dirty water immediately spread. He hurriedly rubbed his hands again and again. Dowda looked at Chi-Wen curiously. After washing his hands and feet, he washed his face. Chi-Wen, aren't you afraid of the cold? I am. But he was more afraid of being dirty. If the water wasn't so cold, he would have washed his whole body. He always felt uncomfortable being dirty. Chi-Wen rubbed his skin until it turned red. After a long time, he stopped. With this condition, he could only wash like this. Then, he ran back to the orphanage with Dowdu. Running could warm the body. At this time, the sky was completely dark. Chi-Wen first hid the pot and the matches in a secluded corner near the kitchen. Then, he went back to the house. From afar, they heard the director's loud voice. Where the hell are you? Hurry up and come back to sleep. Dowda shrunk her neck and subconsciously pulled the corner of Chi-Wen's clothes. Chi-Wen reminded her, do you still remember what I said? Dowda hurriedly nodded. Yes, yes. He definitely wouldn't let the cat out of the bag. He still wanted to eat his fill. Then, Chi-Wen brought Dowda back. After entering the house where they slept, the director's loud voice was no longer blocked. It was very loud and clear. There were already a few children lying on the bed in the house. All the children in the orphanage were in this room. There were a total of 11 children. The older children slept on the top bunk, and the younger children slept on the bottom bunk. Is everyone here? If you are, hurry up and turn off the lights and sleep. Don't waste electricity. Chi-Wen and Dowdu hurriedly went to their beds. Seeing that everyone was lying down, the director turned off the lights and closed the door. Then, she left. Chi-Wen lay on the cold and hard bed. For a long time, he didn't move. The house was silent. There wasn't much entertainment in the orphanage. Even if the children didn't know anything, they knew that if they slept more, they wouldn't feel so uncomfortably hungry. Therefore, once the sky turned dark, they would lie on the bed. During the day, other than when it was time to eat, the other children would go around looking for food. The director didn't restrict the older children from going out. As for the younger children, they were all left in the orphanage. They were not allowed to go out so that they wouldn't be kidnapped and become beggars. Chi-Wen closed his eyes and began to sleep. He prayed in his heart that he would be back when he woke up. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.